Good afternoon, good day, good evening. Thank you for being here on this magnificent Awakening Wednesday. It's so good to have you in the house. And yes, we have the one and only Selina Maitreya with us tonight. So happy to have her consciousness, her light and love. And just before we get started, we are doing a lot of things and we're in this space where we're getting ready for our move. The final will be taking place, I believe, by the end of this week, but know that it's happening, it's going on, and that all is well. So that is so exciting to be a part of that. We have our shoe drive that is coming up that's getting in full gear. So any gently worn shoes that you have, your family, your friends, please pass that word on. And you can bring them here to the center Wednesday evening and also on Sunday. And it'll be a beautiful fundraiser for our community as we are giving back. So super, super, super awesome. So with that, let me bring in the magnificent, the wonderful Selina Maitreya. Selina, how are you?
I am good. That's a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. You deserve that and then so much more.
I appreciate that, my dear.
So how are you doing today?
I am doing very well. I'm definitely happy to be here.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that our topic tonight, which I did not share, is living in the stories we create in our ego. That is fantastic.
Well, it's very important because if the purpose of our work, which is what we talk about every month here, is to transform from being intellectually, emotionally, and egoically directed and leaving that behind and moving toward being intuitively guided, then we need to understand what happens to us when we sit in our ego.
Yes, we do. Everything's just gotten awfully busy right now, but pay no attention. And, recognizing the ego presence, which I believe it serves a purpose, but it's definitely something to observe when we're living from that space and we're making decisions from there. That creates something totally different and something that I think a lot of the world is kind of caught in right now, that we're all kind of wound up in this ego space of who we are, what we think the world is, what it can be, all of these things that it's time to flesh that out, time to really be aware, observe it, and then let's raise that vibration.
Absolutely, because, unless we've taken up the work, which many people have, to live in conscious awareness and to have their thoughts and their actions come from conscious awareness as they move through their daily life, they're frequently directed by their egoic stories. And I want to begin by defining what is the ego. What are we talking about when we say ego? And what is actually its purpose? Because as you said, Gino, there is a very specific purpose to ego. But what happens to us is we're conditioned to work and walk through the world from our intellectual mind, from our emotional body, and from our ego. So the ego is actually meant to alert us when there's a need for fight or flight. We step off the curb. We realize we have to look left or right, and suddenly a car pushes by, and we jump back. That's fight, flight. And that's when we want our ego to be there. But what happens for most of us is that pain body is one of the main, if not the main, functioning directional tool through every moment in our life. So the ego is the pain body. It's the repository of all of our past pain. It's the low frequency in our body that we're always looking to leave and shift out of so we can move into higher frequency.
Well, I want to just hold you right there for a minute because I really love what you said about it being a part of our physical body, the lower pain. You know, there are times that I'm sure you have felt, and I know I feel that something can happen and my energy just really shifts and drops. And it makes me wonder because it's not necessarily whatever is happening that it's such a big thing, but there's a what I'm calling it now. There's like a past reservoir of of old energy that is stuck, that's wanting to be moved. And instead of me saying no, 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 now I recognize that I'm like, come on up so I can recognize you and move you out.
Exactly. And we'll be talking about that today, like how to actually do that. Most people aren't as aware as you are. They're not aware when the ego is in place within their body. And let's review again for everybody who we are and all of the different parts that we can move out of the ego and into the other parts. So this live stream, Selina, has a physical body, a physical brain. I have a personality that's been developed in this lifetime. I have a history in this body. I also have an emotional body, an intellectual body, a low frequency energy field that we're talking about, the egoic body,
Yes.
and the high frequency energy of love. That's our soul level. We call it the intuitive body. And that is the aspect of our being that we want to be directed by because it's our wisdom. It's our divine wisdom. So when we're in the egoic, we have the opportunity to create an alert, which we'll talk about, and move ourselves from low frequency to high. Because once again, in the third dimensional world, we can't be in low frequency and high at the same time.
Absolutely. We can't do both at the same time. And
Exactly.
so, I feel like there's so much energy that is swirling at such a fast pace. And a little bit of me feels like we're a little bit behind the eight ball a little bit because we're a lot of us are just really starting to understand the importance of our energy and the frequency that we are literally transmitters every single day, all day long. And, a lot of the energy that's been pushed down, I'll speak for myself, some of my energy, things that happen that have been pushed down that, put a lid on it and keep it moving, keep it moving. Well, you really aren't moving. That
Or
energy
you're moving
is still
deeper
there.
into the ego.
Yes, it's still there.
Yeah, most definitely. Because, when we're directed by the ego, which is low frequency, our next moments in creation or of creation, whether it's a thought or an emotion, are based and developed from that frequency. Because we're told all the time that each moment of creation is created in the frequency that we're already in. So if we're not aware of that we're in low frequency and we don't change it, we're moving through life, we're projecting out and we're receiving in low frequency.
Yes.
So we have a lot of the word that I want to use is agency. There you go. We have a lot of agency if we have awareness as to which energy field we're in.
I love that. And you are going to take us through some exercises or give us some insight as to how we can utilize this in our everyday life, in our day-to-day living, because you know, that's what it's all about now. But before we move to that, I just want to remind people that Selina Maitreya will be here in San Diego in March. And she will be at our amazing gathering on March the 9th. She will be our guest speaker. So super excited about that. And I believe we're going to do something here live on Wednesday night. And then Friday and Saturday will be the 2-day workshop. You're going to hear a lot more about this starting in January, but get yourselves ready. We're going to have a week of Selina Maitreya, and what a blessing it is for our community, for each and every one of you. So please let your friends know, let your neighbors know, let everybody know. This is an amazing spiritual teacher that'll be here in San Diego. What a great way to kick off the new year. So I just had to get that plug in, Selina.
Well, thank you. Because I'm so excited about coming so we can share this information live with the community and work with people at all of the different events so we can teach you in person 24/7 everything we've been talking about the last 9 months.
Exactly. Yeah. And all the newness that is unfolding from that as well. It is just beautiful and powerful. So, Selina, what do you do when you feel your ego has come up and you can tell? I mean, like sometimes I know that I'm speaking from the ego. Is there a way to stop it in that moment, or is it just observing it in that moment and then healing it later?
Well, I think we have a couple of practices we can use. And before we want to go there, I just want to spend a little bit of time, if we could, talking about the stories that the ego creates, because they are our first indication that we're in egoic energy, right? So the stories are the words that we use when we realize that we're experiencing pain. And I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about emotional pain or feeling disrespected. So the stories are the words that we use to express to ourselves and others the difficulty we have. And these stories are created automatically. Because when we're in low frequency and we're out of our natural inheritance of love, we use these stories to justify the pain we're experiencing. And this happens so many moments throughout the day. And let me give you a little example of that, if I could. So you're driving along and you're feeling great. And suddenly somebody comes and cuts you off. And what happens? We've all had this experience.
Yes.
You go to fear, you get startled.
Yes.
And in that moment, right, that happiness that you had 2 seconds ago is gone. You're out of high frequency. Like that, you are in low frequency. And very few people have the experience in that moment of saying, oh my gosh, whew, thank God I'm safe. May you drive safely and drive a little more slowly. Instead, what usually happens is as soon as the startle effect happens,
right,
people either raise the middle finger, they shout, they scream, they curse, and they're deeply in this story that they've created.
Yes.
That this person is a bad driver, that they don't know what they're doing, that my gosh, I'm so lucky to be alive. And they create all these stories about the other person. And so what happens is that person drives off and they don't know any of this.
Right.
And the person is in the car, which is you or me at that point, is sitting inside of the story we've created and this low frequency energy. And to make it even more difficult, many people, after an event is over, whether it's the car that whether you're in the car and somebody cuts you off, or some other type of perceived injustice, we have to right away tell other people. And we have to create that story and share that story with so many people. And when we do, we're creating and anchoring in that low frequency over and over and over, not realizing that we're recreating a moment that no longer exists. And if we take this one example and kind of, there's a word I'm looking for. Well, if we take it and we suss it out throughout the day,
Right.
there's tons of times we do this, not just in the car. So it's really important that we do have these techniques that we're about to talk about, but we also have awareness of how we be. So do you have any of these moments, Gino? Because I know I've had a bunch that I am constantly being aware around.
Well, I definitely, being a traveling artist for well over 16
Yes.
years, you run into different things all the time. And which they have blessed me and cursed me, because I've learned some things to say, and also in understanding learn what not to say. I remember I was on the freeway. I think I was in LA, actually in the Valley, and I was illegal because I was on my phone talking. And this was a few years ago, but it was still illegal. I was on a handheld having a conversation, and the car next to me, I could see them gesturing, but I was really deep into my conversation, and I blew them off. And then I noticed that they came and cut in front of me really sharply, and they hit their brakes. And I realized, like, oh, they want me to hit them. And so I jam on my brakes. They cut around me, and now the woman is just screaming and pointing and just all kind of nastiness. And I'm still on the telephone having this conversation while this woman is doing all of this. And it's two of them in the car. And I move over to another lane, and then they begin to follow me. And at a point, my conversation is finished with on the phone, but now we are in a conversation. And she's got her window down, yelling out obscenities. I've got my window down, yelling out obscenities. And we're on the freeway doing this. Yeah. And she's yelling that because I'm on my phone, that I've disrupted her world. But, hindsight, of course, is 50-50. We yell and scream for a little while longer, and I make a decision to get off the freeway before my exit, because I can feel that an accident is going to happen between us, because she's weaving in and back and out, and we're doing this. And so I just decide to get off the freeway, and I'm so pissed off, but I'm also shaken. Mm-hmm. I'm shaken by all of this energy, and it is just fuming. It's fuming. And I remember as I pulled off to the side, I'm sitting along the side of the freeway, and somebody passing by says something. And I don't know if they're talking to me or whomever, but I'm in that energy. I'm in, and I just yell out a nasty obscenity to this woman. And she stops, and she turns to me. And she says, I don't know what kind of day you're having. She said, but all I said was hello. And it broke me. I was like, oh my God. This, I was like this. I was, and she continued to walk on. And once I pulled myself together, I drove down the street looking for her. Mm-hmm. And I did find her to apologize. Mm-hmm. But it was beautiful, and it was also scary, because I didn't understand everything, but I did understand that I had held something, that I was caught in this fever pitch of anger. But at the same time, I've been practicing being in the love and the light and the joy, having a good time. The phone call was fantastic because it was a tour that I booked to Australia. So I was very excited about that. And all of the double side of the scales was happening. And to have this woman say something that as I said, I didn't understand what she said, but I just felt like it was an attack. And so I responded from that space. And the wherewithal of her to stop and say, I don't know what you're going through, but what I said was hello. And she kept walking. And when I caught up to her, she saw me and I got out of my car. I said, look, I just really want to apologize. And thank you for snapping me out of it. I'm so sorry. And we laughed about it because she said, girl, I don't know where you was, but you was mad.
Well, that is the ego. Yeah. That is, and thank you for sharing that, because this happens so many places in people's lives where they create stories when the ego is activated. For instance, there are people when they're in the dating world and they're interested in somebody and they're back and forth with them, and then suddenly the link goes cold and they start making up stories. They make up stories about themselves. They make up stories about why there's no communication. They make up stories about the other person. And they're deep inside of all of that before the next text or message comes along. Sometimes we have partners that are quiet and people begin to get worried that something's wrong or the person's angry when all they need is a little quiet. But we make up those stories. Sometimes we can be waiting in a doctor's office for a very long time for our appointment, and we made a point of getting there on time, and you're sitting there 15 minutes, an hour, and the ego comes in and starts creating stories. Oh, they don't respect you. Your time isn't important to them. They ask you to be there, but you don't need to be respected. And before we know it, we're going into a deep dive that has nothing to do with the reality. So if you catch my drift here, the ego creates these stories about how the I, which is all the ego knows, is being rejected. It's not being respected. It's somehow being injured. And the ego makes it about itself. So one of the first ways of recognizing when you're in egoic energy is to listen to the words that you're saying quietly to yourself. Are these stories happening? Is your emotional body charged in not such a positive way? Because it's so important to be aware, because unless we have the awareness of where we are, we can't shift. So once we have that awareness, we can do a few things. We can remember to create ahead of time. And in that moment, we can activate our alert system. We've talked about the alert system before, and I'd love to just share it again. So it's wonderful when you're not being activated, when you don't need this, to ask yourself, shall I create an alarm clock that is visual, or is it a scent that I love because I'm more scent oriented? It's using all of the senses in the body. Or is it a sound that you want to create? My alert system is an old-fashioned brass alarm clock. It's got a round face, regular numbers, not digital. It's got two bells at the top, the kind of alarm clock that was in the cartoons years ago. And as soon as I recognize that my ego is enacted, I visualize this because it reminds me to transform. And I stop and I start to breathe. Because the breath is the physical manifestation of the soul. I don't have to close my eyes, especially if I'm driving. You don't want to do that. But I can just start to breathe. And the breath takes down the emotional body. It creates peace in the neurosympathetic nervous system. And I'm reminded, as soon as I go to the breath, I'm out of low frequency and in high frequency. Because since the breath is the physical manifestation of the soul, I'm already in high frequency. Doesn't get much higher than that. Now, what's really important as well is when we invoke the breath and we take ourselves right to high frequency, we create, excuse me, we create a moment when we stop and go to that alert system. We're creating a moment where we're doing nothing. And in that space is the opportunity to remember to go to the breath. And as soon as we do, we're ready to respond from high frequency. So we're stopping, we're creating space between the event and our response. And most people are right into event and response mode. So that is one of the easiest and quickest ways, once you notice you're on an egoic level, to shift out of that.
So
I mean, the breath never leaves us, and it costs us nothing.
Well, I just want to make sure it's clear to everyone. So this symbol that you have created, is this the alarm that you've created? Is this a visual alarm within your mind, or is this an alarm that you've created on your phone? Or
this is imagination.
Okay.
So
I
it's
wanted to
either
make that clear.
Sure, we're visualizing. If indeed you're into a visual alert,
Yes.
the picture of the alarm.
Yes.
But if you're into noise, you can have a piece of your favorite song, or a sound, or a gong. If you're into scent, you can fill yourself with whatever scent you want to remember, whether it's gardenia or vanilla. And so this is in your imagination, which is very powerful and available 24/7.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's a quick tool to tap into and to get control of yourself. It's very powerful.
It's absolutely, and everybody has breath. Right? We all have it.
We certainly do.
I love that.
I think it's
because in that space, I'm sorry, Gino, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
In this space, in between the event and the response, that's our opportunity to bring in compassion, to bring in kindness. Because after the breath has filled our body, we can remind ourselves that all is well and wish the other person the quiet they need, the safe driving message we'd like to share. But we can't do that, as you shared with us, when we're deep in the egoic.
Now, when we're deep in the egoic, all we can do is make really low level choices. And it's so easy to shift into it. So this is really beautiful to start practicing. How would you begin to practice this? Because if you aren't aware, say you're a person, I've been practicing for a while to become aware of when my when my energy shifts. I've started to observe that. But say if you're not, that you haven't, how would you begin to practice this?
Well, everybody has stress, and everybody recognizes the stress that they have, or hopefully they do. So I think that the first piece is to notice your emotional body. And there are times where you don't have to try really hard. The example of the car is so beautiful because it happens so quickly. It happens to people commonly. And it's a moment that you can't miss. Now, so being aware of your body, being aware of your thoughts. If there's a disturbance, you can pretty much count on the fact that you need to shift your energy before you even get deep into the stories.
Okay.
So the steps would be create your alert system before you need it. Right. Have it in place and practice as you go through your life. If you notice you're in a little dip of a moment and you want to bring your vibration up, practice then. If you go through the room and you're walking and you stub your toe, practice then.
That's a great time to practice.
Right? Well, life gives us so many opportunities.
It does.
So many opportunities to practice. And one of the things I want to say too is very often people feel that this is so it's simple sounding and it sounds so easy. How could that really work? So that's another reason to practice, because you'll see yourself how quickly you shift and how quickly you change. The hard part for most people is when they're in the moment, regardless of how advanced they are, to do the practice. So if you realize afterwards, oh my gosh, there was a chance to do it and I didn't, give yourself grace, pick yourself up, and just try again the next time. Because eventually you will remember, and as you remember, you will actually see results right away. This isn't something that you have to acquire a certain level of understanding. It's automatic.
You know, one of the most beautiful things is that most of the things of the universe are simple.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And it is the practice that is, you do have to practice. And that's where, a lot of times people either don't feel like it, or they, like you say, you don't recognize it while you're in it, and then you get upset with yourself. But I've started to understand that even when I recognize if it has passed or I'm in it, that's a plus, because before didn't recognize it at all. Just moving right ahead. So that's a plus when you start to recognize it, but starting to practice having something that is an anchor for you, whether you're feeling down or you're looking for a shift. For me, it's waterfalls. They have worked for me in that manner. I love waterfalls. I can recall them. I can feel the mist from them. It's very powerful. That shifts me instantly. And I hadn't thought about using my waterfalls or butterflies in this way, but I will, because they're already in there. And I've been working with them.
And I love that. I think that's beautiful, because, when we shift our vibration and let go of the stories that no longer serve, we're actually activating the intuitive body. And what happens every time we choose consciously to leave the low frequency and enter the divine of who we are, which is our high frequency, our wisdom, our soul level, our intuitive body, that body grows. Because one of the universal laws in the third dimensional world is that what we put our attention on grows. So each time we do this, we're actually building our internal core of high frequency, because we're going to that as our response. And so soon it becomes really a regular practice for us to bring in the high frequency as a response. And what we notice over time is that the things that used to activate us before no longer do. Yeah. There was a person in my life who was very important to me, who had a very big personality. And whenever he walked into the room, his personality was front and center. And it used to drive me crazy. I really had a hard time with this. And I started practicing shifting my frequency every time I saw my personal reaction to him. And I went into high frequency to the breath, and I visualized him as kind and open, all the things he really truly was. And over time, his personality stopped bothering me. And now he walks into a room and I go, oh my God, there's Don. And I see him as his totality. Not this egoic persona that he walks into a room with. So we let go of those things over time, because our own core frequency has been built. And what happens is fear becomes an asset, because we're no longer sitting inside of it. We're using it as a tool to shift into high frequency.
That is so wonderful. I love that. As a person that has a very big energy as well, I've had people, close friends and even family in my life that my energy has disrupted their world, be it if it's really high or those times when I'm not as high. And I remember someone saying to me that, um, Gino, it's hard for me to be around you when your energy is low because I always expect it to be so high. And initially, my story started, my ego story went into the fact that, it's not my responsibility. And I got an attitude with my friend. But what I came to understand that one, I don't believe it's my position to um, worry about what someone else's story is about me. And two, that who I am and what I am, that's my reflection. And that's, if I'm in love with that, if I am that person, then that I got to be all right with that. And over time, I get that there was a shift in her perspective because it's like I can't be accountable for your energy, for your high or your low. That's got to be on you. And so I think that's a powerful thing to get, that we all have family and friends that we put things off on them, that if they would do it differently or if they would show up differently, then I would have a better outcome.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful way to practice, because family, this is that time. The holiday season gives you so many opportunities.
So many. And I love that because I too have had people say similar things to me. And what happens whenever somebody comes to me and tells me how something I'm doing is disturbing their peace? I do two things. I right away check in with my intuitive body and ask, what am I to learn here? Because every time something happens in the third dimensional world that brings me into the equation, there might be something that the high frequency energy of the divine wants me to pay attention to. And once I check in, if there's nothing I feel that I can shift or change, I go to part two.
Okay.
And part two is knowing that this is about them and very gently saying to them, thanks for sharing what's in your heart. And may I reflect back to you that you're giving me way too much power, because your choice of how you be is your choice. And if there's something that's happening within me that you're not comfortable with, I'd suggest you look internally and ask the highest divine within you, what's upsetting?
Yes.
Now, if I discover that there's something that I can shift, I'm going to take that shift for myself, and I'm still going to go to step two. So I always like to go to the divine and ask, after all these years of doing this work of 25 plus years, I'm not going to assume I know everything. I'm going to assume actually that maybe there's something I've lost and have missed. And I'm going to ask the highest knowing within me, and then I'm going to be aware. But if there's not something that comes back, I'm just going to assume that it's not something that I need to shift, and gently share with the other person to not give me that much power.
Well said. Well said. So let me ask you this as we're getting ready to wind up. What would you like to leave with people to, maybe two things? One, in understanding the ego story, and then two, to just go over the pointers of how to get to practice it differently so that you can move out of your ego story.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to invite everybody listening to begin, if you haven't already, to practice what we've talked about before, which is witnessing as you be. Cultivate the ability to check in and watch your emotional body, your thoughts as they move through your body, the words that you share with others, the frequency you're wrapping your words around as you share with others. And then when you notice that you're disturbed, your peace has been disturbed, you can almost assume that you're in egoic energy. And that's when you get to invoke the breath of life and change your frequency. I'd also like to share a beautiful practice, words that you can either say in the beginning of the day or somewhere when you're feeling a little down. And here they are. I have choice. I get to choose my response to every life moment. Chaos that shows up is my opportunity to practice choosing peace. As I respond to chaos with love, I create new outcomes. I am free. And this is a beautiful prayer or affirmation, because what it does is it speaks to our choice. We always have choice. And that's why this information is so helpful, because I want us all to be able to live in the choice that we have. And that's the choice to live in peace, not to live directed by the ego. Because as we said earlier, whatever energy we're in creates our next moment. And we all want to create our next moment from the highest frequency we can.
What a beautiful and powerful prayer and practice to leave with everyone. These beautiful pearls of wisdom that Selina is sharing with us. Just keep in mind that having her here in person to be able to really go through the exercises with her is going to be an added plus to your life and to your spiritual practice. Selina, thank you so much for being here today. It is always an absolute joy to be in this space with you. I learned so much every time. So thank you for your wonderful blessings, my sister.
Well, it's my pleasure. You are most welcome. And I love being in your energy. And I am so grateful to you and the Rev and everyone at the center who brings these teachings to us all the time. And I can't wait to see you all in 3D.
In March.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. You know, time passes so quickly.
I know. So with that being said, thank you so much. To all of you out there, thank you for being here at Awakening Wednesday. My name is Gina Walker. I am your music production director, and it is a joy to be here with you. I want to thank each and every one of you for all of the giving that you do, that we could not do all that we do without your divine consciousness, your absolute loving support to this community. So I thank you so much. Hit the QR codes. We love the ding, 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 ding that you do so well. Have a blessed, wonderful night, and know that you are always supported, you are always cared for, and Source is always with you. Peace and blessings, my angels.